It's day 114. It's also August 28th, 2019, and we are in Duchesne, Utah.
You ever wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what am I doing? And more importantly, why? Yeah, me too. Hi, my name's Craig, and this is my story. A story about life. Life out there. For visuals while listening, search Life Out There on your favorite social media platform or use the links in the podcast description.
We decided to hang out in Rangeley for a few more days. That place is just too fun. If your thing is exploring wide open wilderness, it's hard to leave. But with some work scheduled on the rig back in Tacoma, it was time to hit the road again. This time, we would drive through Vernal and continue west a bit before turning north, making sure we saw different stuff this time. At one point, I saw a sign that said, Skinwalker Ranch. I needed to check that out. Why would a ranch be called Skinwalker? It sounded kind of creepy. And it is an interesting place to read about. If paranormal activity is your thing, you may already have heard of this 500 or so acres in the Uinta Basin of Utah. It's also known as the Sherman Ranch. This spot has been the site of numerous documented encounters with sightings that have yet to be explained by modern science, or so they say, ranging from UFO sightings, mysterious creatures passing through what appear to be time portals, and even cattle mutilations, seemingly done with surgical precision so as to indicate that these incidents did not occur at the hands of nature. All the way to poltergeist activity, crop circles, glowing orbs in the sky, strange lights, even shadow people, as referred to by Native Americans in the area. All of this has drawn a ton of attention to the area over the years. So here's the story, as I've read it. The ranch was established in the 1930s by Kenneth and Edith Myers. The Myers actually lived on and worked the ranch for decades with no unusual activity being reported, or at least publicly. So it's left to history, and I guess known only by the Myers, as to whether or not odd things took place and they kept them to themselves, or was it truly the quiet ranch life it appeared to have been for them? Edith Myers would leave the ranch in the 80s after the passing of her husband Kenneth. The ranch would actually sit vacant for nearly 7 years before being sold to the Shermans. The reasons for Edith's departure and why the ranch sat empty for so long just adds to the speculation around the place. That said, as time goes on and deeper investigations take place, there are reports out there that claim that the Myers did have conversations with friends and neighbors and local authorities about the odd things happening around the ranch. Reports of such activity in the Uinta Basin can be traced all the way back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s, in which local authorities were contacted in relation to unexplained sightings and happenings in the area. There's even one line of thought out there that claims a belief that the U.S. military has used the remote area for decades to test advanced military equipment that the general public has no knowledge of. But once the Shermans had purchased the ranch and moved in, the unusual activity began to be reported and documented nearly immediately, ramping up public awareness to the area. The unexplained nature of the UFO sightings, crop circles, huge wolf-like creatures disappearing into the woods, and cattle mutilations would make the Shermans stay on the ranch relatively short. They were there for less than a couple of years when in 1996 they sold the ranch to a real estate professional named Robert Bigelow. His personal interest in the paranormal would lead to him setting up the National Institute for Discovery Science to study the paranormal claims associated with the property. In 2016, the ranch would change hands again when it was purchased by a real estate company named Adamantium. All these reportings throughout the 90s would lead to the ranch being called Skinwalker Ranch. This is a Native American term referring to a shape-shifting creature said to have roamed the area according to Navajo legend dating back centuries. The Ute tribe in the area have their own beliefs in reference to the land as well. They simply believe it to be cursed, and more importantly, to be avoided. As I said, it's interesting to read about, and regardless of your personal beliefs, it became evident quickly that odd things have happened around here. Skeptics say that monetization is at the core of all the folklore. Can you say Bigfoot? And it is indeed true that books have been written about the area, movies made, and as recently as the 2000s, documentaries have been published. There's even a History Channel series. Two things appear to be fact. Strange creatures and activity are documented dating back centuries in local Native American folklore. These people saw something. But were they things that modern-day science could explain? It appears it hasn't yet. The other fact is that to date, this 500-acre ranch in Utah is ranked as the most scientifically studied area on the planet. Now, admittedly, I've watched only a portion of the History Channel series, but suffice it to say that it'll be left to your own interpretation as to how scientific some of these studies actually are. For perspective, or even just perhaps to see how our society today can take most anything and turn it into a monetized form of entertainment, here's a look at a trailer for the upcoming season of the History Channel series, Secrets of the Skinwalker Ranch.
Go. We are on the cusp of discovering the secret of Skinwalker Ranch. The world is watching.
This season on The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch.
We need to flood Skinwalker Ranch with instruments.
Maybe we send 1.6 gigahertz at it.
This is unlike any experiment we've done before.
Heads up, they're coming down!
Oh my God, is there some invisible force causing this to happen?
What is inside the mesa?
Look at that. It's like jelly. I don't know what the hell that is.
The data shows the triangle could be a wormhole.
No way.
I don't think the public is ready for what you got.
Is the military letting us know we're being watched?
Do they know something we don't? What is that?
The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. New season premieres Tuesday, April 23rd at 10. Part of History's Strange and Unusual. Only on the History Channel.
Now, admittedly, I might have gotten sucked into this for a bit longer than necessary. But once you've read that an area has been referred to as UFO Alley, and you read a quote from a local filmmaker stating, "You can't throw a rock in this part of Utah without hitting someone that's been abducted," well, it's hard to put it down. I guess I can see how a few unexplained shadows in the night, or lights reflecting off a mountain ridge, could result in the History Channel paying some unknown millions for a series in which cast members reportedly make about $5,000 an episode. It might also explain why a 500-acre ranch in Utah that sold for less than $200,000 in the 90s could fetch some $4.5 million during the last change in ownership. Capitalism or paranormal? And what's the difference, really? Both can get pretty far out there and nutty when imagination is implied. Our drive through the area on an August afternoon would be just that. An enjoyable drive through the wide open spaces of Utah's Uinta Basin. No strange orbs glowing in the sky. No shape-shifting creatures emerging from time portals, allowing a peek into another dimension. No glowing mountaintops, no unexplained cattle mutilations, nothing. Of course, most of these things do happen in the dark, so maybe next time? Heading north, It was mid-afternoon when we came upon a scenic overlook just outside Duchesne, Utah, alongside the Strawberry Reservoir. We didn't really plan on spending the night when we stopped, but after a long walk with the boys and a bunch of photos, figured, why not? With Strawberry Lake just below us, it's a great place to cook up some dinner, enjoy the views while reading about the area, and waking up to the scenery around here is pretty cool too. Plus, I had to learn about this name, Duchesne. It looks like Duchesne or Duchesne on a sign, but when hearing folks pronounce it Duchesne, I wanted to dig in a bit more and learn about how this name became a part of Utah. And the history of this little piece of Utah digs deep into the 1700s. 1776? Well, that's a year we all know well. The year of our Declaration of Independence. It also happens to be the same year that a Spanish missionary expedition would discover the area that we now call Duchesne. Their goal at the time was to find an overland route from Santa Fe, New Mexico, to their Roman Catholic mission in Monterey, on the coast of what is now Central California. This group of missionaries worked with the Ute Indian tribes in the area, exploring and documenting many unexplored portions of the American West. But in the end, the harsh and unforgiving lands would force them to return to Santa Fe, never reaching California via this route. However, the maps and documentation produced by this expedition were significant for future travelers, and quickly became the template for the Old Spanish Trail, which nearly immediately became the dominant trade route from Santa Fe to Pacific Coast settlements. A journal kept by Escalante, a member of the expedition, is one of the best-known documents describing the western regions of the United States and the indigenous people that inhabited it at the time. The area would remain under the control of the Ute Indians for over a century, with the trade industry flourishing. Things would begin to shift in the region as Western expansion continued in the U.S. during the late 19th and early 20th century. The United States government would begin to exert more influence over the area, in particular after the passage of the Allotment Act in the late 1800s. This would open the region to dramatic increases in settlement through homesteading. The area would enter a period of extreme turmoil during the 1850s and 60s, as did many parts of the country. For Utah, the conflicts would escalate as settlement activity continued to encroach on their lands, and the U.S. government would begin executing forced relocation of Native Americans off of their lands in more desirable areas of the state and into much harsher and rugged terrains, like the Uinta Basin. Names like the Black Hawk War and the Walker War come up in history, leading to conflicts that lasted years. As I read through all this, I began to paint an image in my mind, an image of the United States during the 1800s. Conflicts with Native Americans all across the West. And let's not forget that for 4 years in the middle of all this, the U.S. was also at war with itself. The Civil War. You can begin to see the image of a young country literally on fire. Wars in nearly every region of the country, and regardless of the conflict, both sides fighting to the death, literally dying, to protect what they believed was right. And if I didn't fully understand the significance of what has happened here before, I think I do now. Eventually, a trading post would be established in what is now called Duchesne sometime in late 1905. This would mark the beginning of the end of the transition from the Native American lands to that of pioneer settlements, setting the stage for future growth. And growth would indeed be in the area's future. Early prosperity would be found in farming and ranching, which would continue through the discovery of oil in the area that opened up a new era of growth and opportunity. The name, Duchesne, was first given to the river that runs through the area in the 1820s by French fur trappers. The name is believed to honor Mother Rose Philippine Duchesne, a Catholic nun known for her missionary work in the area. The settlement of Duchesne City is unique in Utah history because it did not occur under the direction of Brigham Young or the Mormon Church. I didn't even know this was a thing. But some reading would tell me that instead it was settled by individuals who obtained land under the Homestead Act, when I guess most of the towns formed in the area at the time were at the direction of the Mormon Church. The town would go through a couple of names, first settled as Dora, in honor of an early settler's daughter, and for a brief period it would be known as Theodore, in honor of President Theodore Roosevelt. Eventually, it would be renamed again to avoid confusion with the nearby town of Roosevelt. This time, the county and the town would be named Duchesne, after the river running through it. The High Uinta's primitive area, situated in the northern portion of the county, is known for its beautiful alpine forests and lakes. And Duchesne is also known as the gateway to the Uinta Basin, and it's bordered by major rivers and streams like Strawberry, Duchesne, Lake Fork, and Yellowstone. The Strawberry Reservoir we woke up gazing over this morning has an interesting history of its own. The lake spans nearly 11 miles and covers over 17,000 acres. The lake is among Utah's largest freshwater lakes. Interestingly, if you remove lakes that cross state borders, then Strawberry Reservoir is the state's second largest freshwater lake behind Utah Lake. And what's interesting in that is that the Soldier Dam, which creates the Strawberry Reservoir, contains an aqueduct system that diverts some of the lake's volume back into tributaries that ultimately feed Utah Lake, contributing to that lake's water volume and size. For me, it was an impressive example of man's ingenuity when it comes to relocating water sources from one area to another, bringing life to high desert regions just like this one. The Strawberry River, the name we know it as today, was originally named on maps as El Rio de Santa Catarina de Sena. Whew, that's a mouthful. And it was named by the Spanish expedition documented as the first European missionaries to explore the area. The name reflects the historical practice of Spanish explorers naming geographical features after saints and religious figures during the expeditions. Santa Catarina de Sena, or Saint Catherine of Siena, was a prominent Catholic saint and philosopher of the area, making the name fitting for the time. The river would later be called the Uinta River by the Fremont people as well as the Ute Indians. Uinta is a Ute word which loosely translated means pine tree or pine forest. Ultimately, the river would be renamed Strawberry River, lending its name to the surrounding valley as well as the reservoir itself upon completion of the Strawberry Dam. Another interesting part of this story is that the original Strawberry Dam was completed in 1913 on the Strawberry River. It was about 24 miles east of Heber City. This would be an earth-fill dam, and the reservoir began to fill as dam construction started in 1911. The first irrigation water would begin to flow a couple of years later in 1915. Starting around 1945, non-game fish, specifically Utah chubs, were illegally introduced into the Strawberry Lake. And by 1960, they made up 90% of the fish in the reservoir. The reservoir would be treated with a poison in 1961 to kill the chubs, but they were reintroduced, and by the 1980s, they would again make up over 80% of the lake's fish population. These chubs referred to are indeed native to the area's freshwater streams, rivers, and lakes. The challenge is that in large bodies of water, they quickly overpopulate, causing an imbalance in the lake's ecosystem by impairing the population of other species of fish. All this would lead to broader, more effective efforts that would be implemented when the Soldier Creek Dam was installed in 1974. This dam was installed to increase the lake's capture area as well as overall size, thus increasing irrigation opportunities throughout the hot, dry summers. Upon the dam's completion, the Strawberry Dam was breached and this increased the reservoir's size, nearly doubling it to its current 17,000 acres or so. In 1990, Strawberry Reservoir was again treated with rotenone, the poison used to kill off the chub population. This time, it would be the largest of such treatments ever implemented in the world. Rotenone is actually a natural occurring chemical when extracted from the roots of certain tropical plants. It's used pretty universally to control specific aquatic species with no known effect on other forms of wildlife or humans. But even still, its use is carefully monitored when administered. After this treatment, biologists would introduce Bonneville cutthroat trout, a voracious chub predator, which has proven extremely effective in controlling the chub numbers and revitalizing the fishery. So much so that in 2006, the reservoir would be the recipient of the American Fishing Society's Outstanding Sport Fish Development and Restoration Project of the Year award. And today, the Strawberry Reservoir is Utah's most popular fishery, receiving over 1.5 million angling hours annually, and it's part of the Blue Ribbon Fisheries program. Now, this would be the second lake we visited in the area where I heard this term Blue Ribbon Fishery, so I had to go look it up. A Blue Ribbon Fishery is a designation in the United States by government and other authorities to identify recreational fisheries of extremely high quality. Official Blue Ribbon status is generally based on a set of established criteria and typically address things like water quality and quantity, water accessibility, natural reproduction capacity, angling pressure, and specific species. I didn't see any information around how many blue ribbon fisheries exist in the country. It seems that criteria can vary by state, but I did see that the status has only been awarded to bodies of water in a handful of states: Michigan, Missouri, Montana, Wisconsin, Wyoming, and of course Utah. But that said, it seems like the more you read, the more confusing it gets. In Colorado, for example, there are several bodies of water that hold a similar designation to blue ribbon fishery. However, in that state, they're called gold medal waters. At this point, my guess is that under whatever name, you can likely find some pretty great fishing just about anywhere in these United States. Having known none of this before sitting alongside the Strawberry Reservoir in Duchesne, Utah, and learning of the challenges, I kind of came to appreciate the complexities involved in managing a large, man-made body of water. And it appears that these challenges are even greater when that body of water was created in the middle of an arid high desert. And tomorrow, we'll drive northwest again, leaving behind us Utah's most popular fishery, an understanding of how man has continued to learn and get better at harnessing the power of water, another experience of sitting in the middle of a land that was once entrenched in war, and maybe even a few UFOs and shape-shifting creatures. And what's in front of us? I don't know. But I wonder what we'll learn there.
Turns out, this thing called life comes with a lot of rules. Maybe it's time to break a few. Because you can. No, seriously. You can.